The story begins with an intense evening jog, punctuated by a scream that reverberates through the air. Rose and Chris find themselves on a quest to locate their adopted daughter, Sharon, fearing that she has embarked on a spontaneous walk through the nearby woods. Rose's heart sinks when she reaches the neighborhood waterfall and discovers Sharon getting ready to cliff dive without conducting a preliminary depth check. Acting quickly, Rose intervenes, rescuing her from a potentially perilous situation. She then attempts to comfort Sharon, who, in her sleep, has been exhibiting a newfound habit of screaming about Silent Hill. We then flash forward an unknown amount of time and catch Sharon making some art in a field of wild grasses. Rose talks to her about their special trip brought on by the Silent Hill fever, a consistent illusion that Sharon doesn't remember at all. This is a gals-only trip where the two ladies hope to reconnect after their short break. It's back to the car, while we see that Daddy's trying in vain to get through to Rose, who won't answer her phone. We come to learn via his investigation of her Netscape leavings that she may be attempting some form of amateur aversion therapy by bringing Sharon to a place she's identified as possibly being the Silent Hill to see if she can free her of her night terrors. As they fuel up later, Rose takes a peek at Sharon's other artwork, and we see that she's been going through a bit of a dark period. When asked about it, Sharon has no memory of the art modifications and is upset to discover them. Then Rose goes in to pay up and ask for directions to Silent Hill, but the clock won't give directions, and the card's been shut down, prompting Rose to contact Chris again. Through their conversation, we learn that when Sharon was adopted, she came from an orphanage in West Virginia, which is where the mysterious town of Silent Hill is located. So Rose feels this is the best course of action to get some answers about what's going on. As she leaves, a motorcycle officer gets her tags and then eventually decides to go ahead and pull them over. Why, it's not entirely clear, and we don't really fully find out because Rose ain't got time for this crap, and she gasses it onto the forbidden road that leads to Silent Hill. As they zoom along chased by the police and distracted by loud static sounds from the radio, Rose is forced to swerve to avoid a girl and smacks her face on the steering wheel. When she wakes up, Sharon is missing, and she finds herself in a world of raining ash. But at least the town seems somewhat inviting. She wanders the main road looking for help, but finds it to be as ghostly as advertised. Luckily, she catches sight of a little girl in the distance, and she chases after her, wondering the whole way why her daughter refuses to return to her and is faced with the decision of whether or not to proceed down a dark stairwell. As she considers this, a tornado siren blares in the distance, and the sky begins to turn black. So she proceeds into the darkness. Fortunately, she has a Boss lighter that fulfills all of her lighting needs. She continues to pursue the flashes of a little girl off in the distance, only waylaid when she turns a corner and comes across a pile of guts on the ground. She is then approached by a little freak baby looking for help. When some others scamper out, she just sort of flails about and then barely manages to squeeze into an adjacent room. This doesn't stop them, however, and they corner her in the room and then demonstrate how hardcore they are by just disintegrating right in her face. Then she wakes up in the same room but with a very different atmosphere, and you know things feel better out in the daylight. She finds the end of the road and remains remarkably unperturbed when a strange lady rolls up on her to tell her about the dark door. Rose begs for info on her daughter, but Dahlia, in a show of true one-upmanship, selfishly changes the subject to how her own daughter suffered and was taken from her, and tries to snatch Rose's locket after identifying Sharon as hers. No, you idiot. Your daughter is a lesson. As Rose heads back to the car, she finds some artsy clues to indicate where she should be going next. But before she can begin her journey, Officer Bennett shows back up again, perfecting a familiar face who can help you're under arrest. Oh man, Rose very nearly carries out on her as they head back toward town. We learn that Bennett has this chip on her shoulder specifically about individual adults bringing individual children towards Silent Hill after some rando used a mining vent to stash the body of a young boy he had kidnapped. When they find the way blocked in this direction as well, Bennett is unfazed, and she immediately heads back toward Toluca Lake to the old fire lookout where there's a radio. However, things go sideways momentarily when they're approached by a strange figure in the ash. It spits some sort of caustic fluid at Bennett, which requires her to take off her top layer of clothing. I hope it doesn't hit her again. As she deals with this, Rose uses the opportunity to run off and find bus route maps that lead her toward the school. But she forgot it was a federal holiday, so when she gets there, the office is completely empty. She goes to check the records herself to verify if her daughter is in attendance. After finding some keys and a flashlight, she wanders off down the hallway. She inadvertently stumbles across a group of teachers finishing up a morning meeting and tears off through the building until she finds a nice quiet spot to catch her breath. Here she finds some fresh handprints and then catches another glimpse of a shy little girl. She takes off after her and catches up in the bathroom, where she behaves in a way that would indicate she is the stalker in this situation. She follows the sound of sobbing, but discovers taint no little girl in the stall. As she comes to the slow realization that she's inside a horror mystery game, she begins to follow the clues and finds pieces of evidence. Unfortunately, she's spotted on her way out and has to barricade herself in as the miners outside attempt to break down the door, but she lucks out when the canary starts going crazy, causing them to run off. This is accompanied by the siren again, which casts her into the upside down as her surroundings are transformed into a completely different type of horror aesthetic. Then, very unluckily, the desiccated bathroom remains come to life, and they give some very strong indications that they would like to lick her a little bit. She runs off before it gets the chance, however, and finds the miners didn't get out quickly enough to avoid a beetle attack. She then finds herself at the gates of hell, where she catches a glimpse of what she presumes to be Sharon before falling through. She eventually comes to in the windmill yard, where a large man with some sort of geometric helmet emerges from the nearby doorway. She runs off again, the best defense in this dark realm apparently, and takes a moment to have a rejuvenating cry on the floor. Having reached her limit, she's just about ready to let the bugs just take her away. But then Bennett drags her out of there, snapping her out of it as they partner up and assess their surroundings. They notice what sounds like a huge metal object being scraped along the ground. They're then forced to play a sick game of duck and dodge as some sort of grand blade is repeatedly thrust through the door. Neither the blade nor the hand can quite reach them. And then his phase comes to an end as dream time is over, and all the damage is undone as their environs are converted back to ash. You saw them, right? What exactly would make you think she hadn't? Rose now has an objective. Find Sharon before whatever that was happens again. First stop is the hotel following the clue she found lodged in that guy's gullet. When they get there, they stumble upon an interpersonal dispute between Dahlia and Anna, a normal-looking survivor. Through her, they confirm that there are others who stay hunkered down at the church where it's safe. Bennett finds another picture in the mail slot for room 111, and they all go off to investigate it together. As they search for the room, Anna fills them in on the town's rich history of burning witches at the stake. Inspired by this story, Rose takes a chance and finds the room hidden behind the mural. This room leads to the next building, where Rose seems to finally catch up with the weeping girl, although the pathway there is treacherous. She presumes the girl to be Alessa, and does remark at how similar she is to her Sharon, but Sharon doesn't do that, as far as she's aware, and then she's gone when the others catch up. We learn they don't speak Alessa's name here, but before any more context is provided, the birds send off another warning that the darkness is coming, and they run out of there like mad women. At the church steps, they're warned against going with the survivors by Dahlia, but they're soon overtaken by the darkness. Also, when Anna stays back to throw a rocket, Dahlia Pyramid Head apparates behind her and fully degloves her entire body, which should be enough to drive anyone to church. Inside the confines of the church, they're mobbed by a group of ascetic weirdos. After a tentative truce, the survivors get back to their nightly prayers. They then get to meet the church leader, Christophe, who Rose pleads with to help them. She reveals, however, that only the demon knows the whereabouts of Sharon, and she offers to lead them in that direction. They're taken to the hospital and told the demon resides in its bowels, hidden behind the face of a child. Rose soaks in the map, committing the Konami code to memory. But then Crystal Bell sees that her daughter bears the appearance of Alessa and suspects the betrayal. Rose is able to get onto the elevator, but only due to Bennett cleaning house, after which she just sort of gives up, while Rose plummets to the bottom. She follows the directions meticulously, but finds her pathway blocked by a gang of raggedy emergency personnel. Hearing a prior warning about them being attracted to the light, She carefully makes her way through the darkness. But just because they can't see doesn't mean they don't still thirst for blood. Luckily, when they lash out, they end up just taking down their own kind. Rose then proceeds through a door and finds herself in heaven, where a child narrator fills in all the details. For her, Alessa was alone in the world, cast off for her sinful origins. In an attempt to restore the balance of purity, the elders convinced Dahlia to allow them to perform a ritual. But in the process of casting out the evil within her, her apparatus knocked over the fire pit, bringing undue attention to their little secret ritual room. Her subsequent suffering summoned a great demon, who cast them all into her darkest dreams. Rose then peekaboos the demon, who claims Sharon represents the good parts of what's left of Alessa. She's been called back so they can bring about the end of days and get their revenge. She states that Crystal Bell will easily acquire Sharon, and enlists Rose's help to get her into the church to interrupt the purity ritual. Then she snuggles on up and just phases right into that uterus. Sure enough, we see the elders arrive at Dahlia's flat to nab Sharon back at the church. Crystal Belt dons her ceremonial vestments and starts up the bonfire, the preamble to the big show here being Bennett's immolation, which actually doesn't take too long. Unfortunately, there's a lot of time for fanfare and reset in between, which gives Rose enough time to arrive before they even get the fire back up again. She tries to convince them that they're all lost souls burned in the fire they started, which I think she manages to get across. Her defiance in the face of their abuse is enough to ward them off until Christabel, dominant as a Clydesdale, steps in and stabs her in the heart. When her tainted blood spills from her chest, it brings the darkness into the church, and then Alessa emerges on her hospital bed of thorns, and her tendrils of barbed wire shoot all over the interior of the church, stringing up the survivors and really badly stinging them, and causing their blood and viscera to rain down on the guilty. As these unspeakable horrors unfold, Rose and Sharon close their eyes in the corner, eventually waking up and casually strolling out of there. They manage to get the car started and embark on the foggy drive home. When they arrive, we see intermittent shots between them and Chris, and we come to realize that their souls are now stuck forever within the Shadow Realm. If you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to become a part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.